Okay, so have you ever looked at a giant, totally insurmountable obstacle and, I don't know, instead of seeing a roadblock, you literally saw an invitation? In today's Explainer, we're going to trace the absolutely unbelievable, globe-trotting journey of a man named Takashi Miyahara. And let me tell you, this is not just your standard biography. It's really a masterclass in vision, pure endurance, and figuring out how to do the literally impossible. We're going to dive into how this one guy managed to connect two totally different worlds, and in the process, left a legacy that forever changed how humanity interacts with the absolute highest peaks on Earth.
So, the central question we're asking today is this. What lies beyond the mountains? Right? It's a literal question, sure, but it's also this deeply metaphorical one that pretty much defined our subject's entire existence. See, Miyahara was a boy born in a tiny, landlocked mountain village. And normally, most folks born into that kind of environment, they stay there. The mountains kind of act as walls. But for Miyahara, his whole life basically became defined by this one circular theme, constantly chasing whatever lay just over the very next peak and pushing way past the boundaries that ordinary people just accept as, the end of the line.
To put this into perspective, just think about the sheer scale of this contrast. His birthplace is Aoki Village in Nagano Prefecture, Japan. It's quiet, it's rural, heavily forested, and incredibly safe. It's the kind of tight-knit, cozy community where mountains are just this gentle, everyday backdrop. But then, compare that to the Himalayas. Just massive, untamable, literally the most imposing and dangerous mountain range on planet Earth. So how on earth does a kid from a quiet little village end up practically conquering the roof of the world?
Well, born in 1934, Miyahara initially went the traditional route. He studied industrial chemistry and mechanical engineering at Nihon University. He absolutely could have just settled into a comfortable corporate job in Japan. But look at these leaps. By 1958, he totally ditches the corporate track for extreme exploration, and he joins Japan's 4th Antarctic Research Expedition. Then he heads to Greenland. The guy is actively seeking out the absolute harshest environments on the planet. And by 1962, this relentless drive brings him to set foot in Nepal for the very first time.
In places like Antarctica and Greenland, you learn real quick that you cannot negotiate with a blizzard, right? You just can't conquer nature. You have to figure out how to work with it. The extremes taught him that weather, distance, and logistics are the absolute rulers. But above all else, preparation and cooperation are the only things actually keeping you alive. And these weren't just handy survival tips. They were the exact foundational skills he was going to desperately need in the Himalayas.
All right, moving into a vision for Nepal and seeing potential in the mountains.
So, when Miyahara first visited Nepal back in 1962, and then later went to work for the Nepalese government in 1966, the country was vastly different from what we think of today. Infrastructure was incredibly limited, and roads almost never reached the high mountain areas. But where outsiders just saw a lack of development, he saw this completely different path forward. Now, Nepal didn't have the heavy industrial resources of its massive neighbors, but Miyahara realized they had something totally unmanufacturable, these extraordinary landscapes and a deeply distinctive culture. And this sparked a massive visionary realization for him. He figured they could just bypass traditional industrial reliance entirely and instead build this robust, sustainable future by offering the world a tourism experience that literally could not be found anywhere else on the globe.
Which brings us to this one singular, fateful moment in the spring of 1968. Picture this. Miyahara is standing on a high ridge in Shyangboche, and the view from up there, it literally changes the entire trajectory of his life, not to mention the whole future of Nepalese tourism. Looking out at the majestic Mount Everest range, he didn't just want to climb it himself. He wanted everyone to be able to feel that exact same awe he was feeling. And right then and there, this utterly impossible idea struck him. He decided he was going to build a hotel on that exact spot.
3,880. I really want you to let that number sink in for a second. That is the altitude in meters. For those of you who use feet, we are talking about almost 13,000 feet up in the sky. At this altitude, the air is incredibly thin. Your body is just struggling for oxygen. And Miyahara decided he wanted to build a world-class hotel right there. It was just pure, unfiltered absurdity.
Just think about a typical hotel build for a second. You've got cranes, paved roads, heavy machinery, big flatbed trucks delivering all the steel, right? Now compare that to the stark reality of building in the Himalayas. Zero infrastructure, absolutely no roads, freezing, howling winds, and altitude sickness on top of it all. Basically, every single assumption you'd make about modern construction had to be thrown completely out the window. The supply chain he had to put together was, quite frankly, mind-blowing. First, these super delicate materials, like massive glass doors and solarium windows, are shipped by sea all the way from Japan to Calcutta. Then, they somehow get transported into Nepal.
Finally, and honestly this is the absolute craziest part, porters, working alongside legendary local Sherpas and the Japanese architect Yoshinobu Kamagaya, literally carry these materials on a grueling 2-week, 80-kilometer trek from Lama Sangu. Seriously, just imagine carrying giant sheets of glass on your back up to Himalayas? No way!
But against all odds, the mountain actually yielded. In 1971, Hotel Everest View officially opens its doors. And this place brilliantly illustrates Miyahara's core philosophy. He intentionally designed it so that every single room faced the mountains. See, he didn't build this exclusively for those elite hardcore mountaineers who spent weeks acclimatizing. No, he built it as a bridge. He wanted ordinary travelers to be able to wake up, walk right out of their room, and be face-to-face with the raw majesty of Mount Everest.
Now, this relentless drive earned him a pretty incredible nickname, the Don Quixote of the Himalayas. And people called him that because his dreams were just so enormous, often seeming totally unrealistic to everyone else. But there was a very vital difference between Miyahara and the fictional Don Quixote. Miyahara wasn't just out there chasing imaginary windmills. He was highly, highly action-oriented. He went out, raised the money, solved the insane logistics, built the teams, and actually turned his seemingly impossible imaginations into concrete reality.
Which brings us to the next chapter, Beyond the Hotel and a deeper connection to Nepal.
You know, it would have been so incredibly easy for Miyahara to just build his famous hotel, declare victory, and fly comfortably back to Japan as this super successful businessman. But his ambitions for the region were really just getting started. He didn't just build a hotel and leave. His roots grew incredibly deep there. He established trans-Himalayan tours to make sure there were sustainable connections between visitors and the country. By 1987, he's expanding again, building Hotel Himalaya down in Kathmandu. But it goes way past just business for him. He ended up marrying a Nepali woman, deeply embedded himself in the local community, and took the ultimate step of commitment. He gave up his Japanese passport to get official Nepali citizenship. So this wasn't just a project to him anymore. This had truly become his home.
And his commitment to his new home went all the way to the top. Get this, in 2008, at an age when most successful entrepreneurs are, well into their quiet retirements, Miyahara did the unthinkable. He entered Nepalese politics. He actually campaigned and ran for office. His entire platform was driven by this fierce desire for Nepal to build its very own economic opportunities and become totally independent of foreign assistance. Now, while his electoral bid wasn't ultimately successful, it just brilliantly illustrates his unwavering, lifelong dedication to the country's independent future.
Looking back at it, there is this incredible, almost poetic symmetry to his life's path. He started out as a young boy born in the quiet, sheltered, forested mountains of Aoki Village in Japan, and he grew into this proud citizen, visionary, and absolute champion of the Nepalese Himalayas. He didn't leave his mountain roots behind at all, actually. Instead, he took the quiet lessons of that small village and somehow scaled them up to the absolute largest stage on Earth. In 2019, at the age of 85, Takashi Miyahara passed away in Kathmandu. His journey truly did come full circle. He left behind this massive physical legacy, right? Hotels, tour companies, regional infrastructure, but honestly, his most profound legacy is probably the intangible bridge he built between Japan and Nepal. He proved that the greatest resource a place has isn't always something you can manufacture in a factory. Sometimes it's just raw natural beauty and the sheer willingness to share it with the world.
Which leaves us with a final, and I think deeply provocative thought. What is your mountain? We all have barriers, limitations, things that seem like the absolute edge of our world. But Takashi Miyahara's life challenges us to look at those obstacles not as an endpoint, but as a beginning. So the next time you face an impossible climb, maybe ask yourself, what incredible possibility is waiting to be discovered just beyond it? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep climbing, and I'll see you next time.